That's right. Welcome in. Welcome back, everybody, to an ACC title game edition of the Always Pigskin Show. If ever there was an appropriate year for a Notre Dame guy and a Clemson guy to come together and do shows, we have the perfect year. What do you think, Pigskin?
It is the perfect year. Like I said, I would not be doing this show with you if Notre Dame wasn't in the ACC. It's not like I like you or anything.
I don't blame you for that, actually. I really don't. But I think we had that agreement before we knew all this stuff was going to blow up.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
I think so.
Yeah. You know what? I would still do a show with you, John, whether you're in the ACC or not, buddy.
Hey, even when we're not, we're halfway. Doesn't that count?
Yeah, no, not in my mind. We'll talk about that later, though.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So here we are. We got the game Saturday. Notre Dame won match one. What are you thinking?
Advantage Notre Dame. Or is it? Do you remember back to our first meeting here on YouTube? Not our first, but our most recent meeting here on YouTube prior to the first matchup. I said, what did I say to you, John? I said, I think the team that wins the first time has the doesn't have the advantage in the second game. And I also said to you, John, if you were going to pick one of these two games to win, which one would you pick to win? And at the time, Notre Dame was a team that has been longing for a big win, especially against a team like Clemson. The last two times they met, you lost. You said, I need to see Brian Kelly win a big game. I need to know that he can. And I said to you, I'd rather win the second one than the first one. First of all, because it's a championship game. But now here Clemson is. This game means more to Clemson than it does Notre Dame. Imagine that. Imagine what was that game was played 5 weeks ago. Imagine then somebody would be telling you this game this week means more to Clemson than it does to Notre Dame, with Notre Dame's first and only year being in a conference championship game. Clemson loses, they're out. I believe that Notre Dame is in no matter what happens in this game. Now, if they lose, it depends on how badly they lose to what seed they'll be in. And the last thing Notre Dame wants is to drop to the 4 seed and have to face Alabama round 1. That's the only thing here. But I aside from the personnel situation, and we can go into that if you want, but aside from the Clemson personnel situation, I think that this game is more important to Clemson than it is to Notre Dame right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, you just combined like 10 different points all into 1 point.
Yeah, I'm trying to confuse you, John.
Yeah, well, you did a good job because you covered 8 of my bullet points for the hour in the first 30 seconds. So good job.
Thank you.
I'm not comfortable looking at the 2-game scenario you threw at me. Which one would you rather? I have a hard time totally separating them because to me, they're intimately connected, at least for Notre Dame, to where if they didn't play well and win the first one, there's no chance they would be able to in the second one. But at the same time, there's no doubt the second one means more. I just think if Notre Dame didn't get it done in the first one, there's no way they would have in the second one. So I wanted to get it while the getting was good. You didn't have your quarterback. The defense was banged up. That was the one. And I felt that the pressure was on Notre Dame, especially given those personnel factors. In match 1, I felt the pressure was all on Notre Dame. Now I feel like that's flipped because Notre Dame has the one in their back pocket. And that's one question I have for you. From the Clemson side, do they feel that pressure knowing if you don't want to be the team that lets Notre Dame come in 1 year and win the ACC and troll everybody? Do they feel that pressure? If they do, would we even know it? Or is this group of coaches and Lawrence and everybody so used to these big environments, they just keep it moving and we all argue about it on Twitter? Like, where's the pressure level from the Clemson side?
I think the pressure is high.
But they're used to it. They're all battle tested. Yeah. The coaching staff, the quarterback.
So again, from a playoff standpoint, let's start there. From a playoff standpoint, the pressure is all on Clemson because if Clemson doesn't win, I don't think they'll get in. Now, there's people that disagree with that, but I tend to agree. And by the way, if Clemson loses this game, I don't want them in the playoffs. If you lose twice in the same season to a playoff caliber team, which is what obviously Notre Dame is, I don't think you belong there. Now, having said that, I think it's just hard. And forget Clemson and Notre Dame for a second. Just from a college football perspective, I really believe it's hard to beat a great team twice. That's where I'm coming from with this. And that was the whole reasoning behind my comments in the first video that we did was, would you rather win the first or the second? Because I think the winner of the first, no matter who it is behind the 8 ball in the second, because it's just too hard to beat great teams twice.
Well, wouldn't you still rather win the first one?
Like
it's not a one or the other. Like, even though you're saying it's harder to do, you would rather have the win in your pocket and say, we'll figure that shit out. Of
course.
Saturday, right?
Of course, you'd rather win. You'd rather win any game than lose any game. There's no doubt about that. But again, hindsight's 2020, and I believe if you're talking about two great teams, I would rather be on Clemson's end of this. Believe it or not, it's really hard for people to grasp the fact that Clemson, all the pressure's on them. If they lose, they're out. If Notre Dame loses, they're probably still in. It's hard to wrap your mind around the idea that you would rather be Clemson in this situation. But I actually rather would be Clemson in this situation. There is something to be said for vengeance. There is something to be said for retribution. The way that game ended was embarrassing for Clemson, and I'm not taking anything away from what Notre Dame did on the field. But Clemson had the game in their clutches with a couple of minutes left, and they
listen, I got to tell you, as good as that staff is, that last offensive drive Clemson had in regulation, they could have ended that damn game a couple different ways. Not even with good plays, and I think they could have ended it.
Look, and I blame this on Dabo Swinney, and so I don't criticize Dabo Swinney a lot because the biggest criticism with Dabo Swinney from the outside anyway, not in Clemson world, is what the things he says. Now, you can love it or hate it. I happen to love it, and I'm pretty sure that if he was the coach of your team, not Notre Dame, but your said team, no matter who you are, you'd love that about him too. But on the field coaching decisions, time management, all those sort of things, Dabo Swinney has been really good at doing that sort of thing over the years. But this was a huge blunder. A lot of people are putting the blame on ETN for not running out of bounds. I mean, for not falling down in bounds. Instead, he ran out of bounds. I don't put the blame on ETN because I put that on the coaching. Before that drive should have ever happened, they should have gathered the team around and said, hey, the time is on our side. We've got the lead. No matter what you do not run out of bounds. Talking to the entire team. That conversation didn't happen. And ETN, by mistake, did run out of bounds. Game might have ended differently. But I think these are two very evenly matched teams. Forget the personnel. Forget Trevor Lawrence not being in there. Forget the defensive star. Every team can make an excuse. Well, this guy was out. This guy had a hangnail. This guy had a toe fungus, whatever it is. Okay, great. There's a reason there's 85 scholarships and not 10. Okay, you have backups, you recruit well. Clemson's been recruiting well for a long time. They have the championship pedigree. There is no excuse for what happened in that game. I still would rather be Clemson in Charlotte, even though and maybe you know what, John, maybe that's the reason I am so confident. And maybe that's the reason that I feel like Clemson has the upper hand in this game is they have the championship pedigree. They've been there before, and I really believe that Clemson plays better ball when their back is against the wall and when they're not the favorite. And I mean, technically they're the favorite in Vegas, but we saw what happened in South Bend, 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, I understand that, and I mean, I don't expect pressure to be an issue for Clemson. The quarterback's experience, Dabo's experience, the staff is like, I don't expect that to really affect them. This is all just so weird and unique from a Notre Dame perspective. The idea that you would go into a game of this magnitude with leeway where it's not you lose and your dreams are over. It's a weird place to be. You mentioned the worst case being Notre Dame loses, drops to 4, plays Alabama right away. That's not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is you lose by 4 touchdowns. They drop you totally out. I don't trust any logic this committee has, I want to know what the number would be if things went really bad for Notre Dame to where they're not even in it. I don't see that happening. I don't think it's likely, but I wonder what that number is. And you're absolutely right, though. You don't want to drop to 4, play Alabama as your welcome gift.
I'm not sure there is a number, John. And I've thought about this a lot. And, through doing my shows and chatting with people in the chat and having
they have the biggest win of the college football year. So that helps no matter what.
And if you trust the playoff committee, which nobody does, they've already set a precedent. Yep. So they set a precedent this last week with Florida. Florida loses to a 3-win unranked LSU team. They already have a loss to A&M, and they only dropped 1 spot. So I don't really see a number. I mean, the number might be 75-0 that where Notre Dame gets knocked out. Outside of that, I don't think there is a number.
Yeah, I kind of, my thinking is exactly where you were going. And then after seeing their rationale with Florida,
yeah,
you're, as a Notre Dame guy, you're going, okay, like, are we just in then? Because, so I'm with you on that. Here's one thing I've been thinking about leading up to this show that I wanted to ask you. What do you think is going to be a bigger difference in this game than the first game from the Clemson side? Do you think it's getting your defense healthier or having Lawrence back? Which is the bigger factor you think will impact this game?
That's a great question. And this is a debate between Clemson fans that I've been seeing, and Clemson fans are split 50-50 on this. Some people think that the leadership qualities, the experience of Trevor Lawrence, things would have ended differently in the first game. And I can't really argue with that. It's hard to debate a negative, right? Because he wasn't there. We don't know what the difference would have been. We don't know what the playbook would have looked like between DJ and Trevor. Having said that, DJ for a freshman played amazing. I mean, he had 40 something,
439, and that's the most passing yards ever given up against Notre Dame, and they ended up winning. It was just the weirdest thing ever.
Right. So DJ played amazing. He did everything you could ask a true freshman to do on the road in a big game in South Bend. I mean, the guy played amazing, but still not Trevor Lawrence. We don't know what the difference would have been. There's also I think the main thing in that game with Trevor Lawrence not being there was the chemistry between Etienne and Lawrence. We saw what the Notre Dame defense did. They completely shut Etienne down. Do you know what his stats were?
He had like,
they were so depressing. I blocked them out.
He had like 34 yards rushing.
I think that might have been the entire team, buddy. I think he might have had less than that.
I mean, and you actually lead me down my next path, which is I'm telling all the Notre Dame people, it's all Lawrence. But from the Notre Dame side, if they don't do an A+ job against the run again, it ain't going to matter. So I don't care if Lawrence is back or Joe Montana's playing for you guys or what. If they don't do a job of stopping the run again, I don't see Notre Dame winning this game. So that's number one, even with Lawrence back. They got to do that again. That's priority number one.
So from an X's and O's standpoint, I don't want to get too far into the weeds with the X's and O's here, but the reality is when Lawrence is on the field, he's a dynamic run threat, and the RPO game is on a whole different level. DJ, although he's a big guy, he's fast and all that, he's still not an experienced runner. He wasn't a runner in high school. He hasn't played enough in college to really establish himself as a runner. And he was battling a shoulder injury. They were trying not to run him, which is completely out of the wheel works for Clemson. Clemson loves running their quarterback. They always have under Dabo Swinney. No matter who the offensive coordinator is, it's been a theme for Clemson for the past 12 years, running your quarterback. We will see that more. And Trevor Lawrence's ability to extend plays with his legs or do RPOs or design quarterback runs will cause the defense to respect that, and that opens things up, obviously, in the passing game and with Travis Etienne. That's the biggest difference on offense. Defensively, this will not be the same team that you saw a month ago. Having Tyler Davis back in the middle of the defensive line, having the quarterback of the defense, James Skalski, back is going to be huge, and having Mike Jones back as the other linebacker will also be great because he's the best cover linebacker that Clemson has. So Ian Book absolutely torched Clemson in that first game with his legs. And this is a MO of this might be one of the most impressive things about Ian Book, and one of the most underrated things, unless you're an Irish fan, you know this. He is an absolute baller with his legs. Deceptively fast, really twitchy, smart. He knows when to run, when not to run. How many rushing touchdowns does Ian Book have this year?
I have no idea. And you know what else, though? I got to tell you, all those attributes you just brought up, he didn't display the first handful of games of the year. And then and I was there complaining about it. All of a sudden the light went on and he's not panicking. He's buying time. He's making good decisions, knowing when to bail and run, knowing when to bail, but not cross the line and find a guy. It's all come together for him the last half of this year. He's playing the best football of his life. I mean, there's no way around it. But one thing I'm having nightmares thinking about is Lawrence faking that handoff to ETN. Everybody's going this way, and he pulls it and goes out the other way and throws it, or it's wide open. What Notre Dame did the first time is had our best linebacker, Owusu Karamoah, shadow ETN wherever the hell he is. That was his job. We're not going to let this guy beat us. If the young kid throws and beats us, we could live with it. That was the plan. That plan's going to have to be altered because they're also now going to have to account for Lawrence pulling the ball and running or extending plays. That's one thing I'm worried about. And then the other thing with Lawrence, I think because he's older, his read progressions are going to be better. His timing's going to be, his clock's going to be better. Like all the things that come with having an upperclassman, really good quarterback. What I've been saying is, do I expect Lawrence to throw for more than DJU did in the first game?
No,
I don't. But I expect him to be maybe more efficient with when he does throw or reading things a little better. And also with his legs. So that's kind of what I'm on alert for. But if Notre Dame doesn't shut the run down, it's going to be a really hard task. So to me, that's still primary focus number one. It has to be.
Notre Dame's going to sell out to stop the run. That was their plan in the first game. It worked out for them in the long run. Although, I mean, it still was a high-scoring game. It wasn't like they shut Clemson's offense down completely. But I just think that, I think that Lawrence adds another element to the game. Maybe it might not show up on the stat sheet, but it will show up on the scoreboard. That's all that matters. Defensively, though, Clemson, again, we talked about how it's hard to beat a great team 2 times in a row. Imagine having to out-scheme Brent Venables 2 times in a row when he has film on you from 4 weeks ago.
Yep. And we talked about that the first time. I said, no matter what happens, it's no treat giving him about over a month to look at everything. And Notre Dame's still going to try and establish the run. They're going to. That's their identity. They've been pretty good at doing it. Losing their center for the year was a big loss. But that's what I've been saying is, how does Brian Kelly and Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator, adjust off of Venables' adjustments? Like when you get into these rematches, that's where this comes into play. So who's going to do a better job of adjusting off the adjustments? Notre Dame can't think they're just going to come in and do the exact same thing. Clemson's too smart for that. So I'm interested to see what they're going to do differently. Because like you said, you can't just roll in there figuring the same thing will work.
And something that I'm looking forward to, or well, I'm hoping happens in this game is something that did not happen in the last game. And that is Clemson gets out to an early lead.
Yep. And it's a big factor.
I'm not saying a crazy lead like 28 to 9. I'm saying 14, and let's say it's 14-0 or 21-7 in the first half. Is Ian Book really qualified, or is he up to it to pass his way back into a game? And that's what it's going to come down to. I think if Notre Dame is to win this game, they're doing it on Ian Book's arm. And forgive me, and I'm not trolling you or anything. I'm asking you legitimately, of all the games that's happened this year that the Irish have won, how many of those have come on the arm of Ian Book?
Well, Clemson. To some extent on that last drive.
Yeah, on that last drive, yeah.
On the last drive. But here's the thing. That's not Notre Dame's game. And it's a huge factor. Chasing a Lawrence-led team from behind, Notre Dame is not built for that. They're built for a 7-minute drive where they throw it to the tight end a couple times, run some zone scheme, run plays, and go down the field that way. That's where Notre Dame's most comfortable. That's where they're most effective. If they have to, they could push it down the field, but that's not the way Notre Dame's built. So I agree with you. Getting off to a good start early is really important for Notre Dame. Think about it. Who do you feel more confident in? Lawrence, if he has to throw the ball to get back in it or do something like that? So getting off to an early start again is huge. Notre Dame had that big run right away in the first game. That set the tone for everything. Set the tone from minute one. So a fast start is key. Notre Dame does not want to have to chase in this game. That's not what they're built to do best. They're just not. Now, a question I have for you is, those defenders are back. Are they healthy or are they back, but they're still dinged, or are they back and they're good to go?
So according to what the coaching staff says, and that's all I can go off of, they say they're 100%. So, I don't know about that. They said the same thing during the last Clemson game when Skowski came back. They said he was 100% and he was out on the sidelines in the second quarter.
I think that's why I'm asking that, because I remember seeing him and then them saying, okay, now he's back pulled off.
But the difference between that game is he wasn't injured. I think he might have had some soreness and they just took him out because we don't need him. We're looking ahead to Notre Dame and there's no reason to even risk it. So I think he'll be okay. I think for all intents and purposes, now we do have a couple of wide receivers out that have been out for several games, but they are two starters. Both Frank Ladson and Joe Ngata are not playing, or maybe one of them is, but I don't know. But I never expected them to play anyways. So, but as far as the injury list for Clemson goes, they are more healthy this week than they have been since week one as a total team. So I'm not going to, I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, that's one question that I did have.
How about the Irish though? As far as the injury front goes,
I think other than the center that was out for the year, they're pretty damn healthy. And we got a receiver who's been out all year that was good, but he wasn't there for the first game. So it's pretty much. I do like the fact that I feel like we're both relatively as healthy as you could be this time of the year, coming into this. But here's the thing. Notre Dame people are a little on edge with Lawrence coming back and what that could look like. I think what Notre Dame people keep coming back to is it's Lawrence might be able to pass his way to victory here or whatever. Notre Dame people feel pretty confident about what they did up front on both lines in the first matchup. And that's been a big concern of Notre Dame in these bigger games. It just becomes apparent that up front they're getting pushed around. This was really the first one where that didn't happen. And people are encouraged by that, saying, even if Lawrence comes back, physicality's physicality, you should be able to hold up there. That's what I think is giving me comfort, I guess, is just knowing we could hang with the big boys up front.
Yo, sure. Look, I'm trying to think, and I'm not a statistics guy. I think statistics, they're great. They don't tell the whole story. I'm sitting here trying to think defensively of a team in college football that is better than Notre Dame's defense.
They're pretty good. So good that we're losing. So good that we're losing our coordinator to Vanderbilt.
They're not pretty good, John. They're great. They're great. And I think they're underrated. And the thing that welcome to the ACC, by the way, because this is what happens when you join the ACC, even if it's only for a year. Anything that you do, we might have the best defense in the country, but you play in the weak ACC. Well, okay, maybe that's true. Maybe the ACC sucks. Maybe Notre Dame is way out, on a higher class than the rest of the ACC. But did you see Notre Dame's defense push around Clemson's offensive line? Is Clemson a scrub? Maybe you think that they are. Not you. but other people.
Yeah, I get you.
And look, Notre Dame's defense is elite. They're elite. Is there a better defense that you've seen under Brian Kelly than this year?
Definitely not under the Brian Kelly era. No, the 2012 defense, the team that went 12-0 and then got blown out by Alabama, that defense ended up giving up less points, but there's no way it was this deep, athletic, big, or fast. There's just no way. Right. This is the best defense of the Brian Kelly era by far.
Yeah, and you can tell, you'll see this weekend that will play out on the field. The respect that Clemson and Tony Elliott and Dabo Swinney, who are the main offensive minds on the team, have for Notre Dame's defense. They are going to make sure that the ball gets out of Lawrence's hand as quick as possible because they know how good the pass rush is. I think they know there's a mismatch from Notre Dame's defensive line to Clemson's offensive line. And that's been the same all year, but I think they're going to scheme for that. They're going to get the ball out of his hands quickly. They're going to do a lot of screen passes. You're going to see a lot of passes early thrown behind the line of scrimmage. You're going to see a lot of handoffs to ETN, and they're going to, of course, make you shut down ETN before they start doing the down the field passes. But Notre Dame's defense is as good or better than anybody's in the country that I can think of this season.
You know what I like most about this defense? Obviously, they've done a good job with talent and development, identifying guys, all that. What's impressed me the most is they adjust very, very well, and I am not used to that from Notre Dame. We've had a lot of games this year where the first couple defensive drives, teams move the ball or score on us. Happened against North Carolina. They scored 14 points real quick, scored 3 for the rest 3.5 quarters, gave up 3 points. So Clark Lee has been really good at making adjustments early on, and the defense has been great. It's the backbone of the program, and it has been for a handful of years. And now Clark Lee's going to Vanderbilt, so we're losing him.
So we could have a whole discussion on that in itself. But as far as that hire goes, first of all, congratulations to Lee going back to his alma mater. That's a great story and everything, and he deserves it.
Yeah.
How does that worry you? Because we've seen this happen before. You get a guy from a championship level team in that season, gets a job somewhere else. Does it worry you that his focus is not on the rest of this season and it's on what's coming next year with Vanderbilt? I mean, that's a legitimate question.
Here's the reality. Of course, Notre Dame's going to say we're happy for him. This isn't a distraction. We're all bought into what we're doing. Now, listen. Practically speaking, that's physically impossible. It can't be true. Clark Lee's got to be on the phone putting together a staff for Vanderbilt now. He can't wait till after the playoff. So on a human level, Clark Lee needs to be doing those Vanderbilt things, and he's trying to get us where we want to go this year. It's like the best and the worst thing that can happen. You're excited. You have a great defensive coordinator and a good defense. The downside is people come calling unless you're Venables. Why is he so comfortable there? Get him out of here. Let him go coach somewhere.
Hey, right here. You know all about that, Green. You're an Irish guy. Come on.
But if he could make more money as a head coach, this is just the perfect fit for Venables. He seems comfortable. He loves it. It's home. He seems to love it.
That's been quite frankly a blessing at Clemson, is that we're able to keep our coordinators for such a long time, and not just the coordinators. It's the position coaches. It's the strength. I mean, it's everything. And that's a culture you build over a certain amount of time. And Venables himself, he comes up every year for these coaching jobs. He came up for the similar coaching jobs that were opened in the past few weeks. And he just said, look, he said, I have a unique situation here at Clemson. I'm obviously compensated very well for my services, but it's just, it's not all about the money with some of these people. I do believe that Venables will leave at some point, or maybe he won't leave. I've been of the opinion, and I could be completely out of bounds here, that he's maybe had a conversation with Swinney, and Swinney says, look, man, whether it is 5 years, 6 years from now, I'm going to make my way out of here, whether it's to the NFL or to Alabama, my alma mater, or wherever it is. And you're the next guy in line if you stick around. And maybe that's what he's waiting on. I don't know. But Clemson is certainly.
That's what people wanted to happen with Clark Lee and Brian Kelly. Yeah. That's the exact dynamic we've talked about. Now, Notre Dame's also just went through this. the defense got good with Mike Elko, and Clark Lee was on the Notre Dame staff underneath Elko. Then Elko got a boatload of money when Jimbo Fisher went to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
So then he followed him there, and then we promoted Clark Lee. So now the question is, do you do that again with the guy in-house at Notre Dame for the continuity of what is working? That's the other interesting dynamic here is when your defense is crappy and you fire your DC, you look at hiring the next guy differently. Notre Dame's in a unique position because the defense is great. So I know everybody wants the shiny new toy from outside. This is really interesting because there could be an argument for continuity here because what they're doing is working and they're recruiting the guys to run this. So it's going to be interesting to see. But on a human level, there's no way it's not a distraction.
Yeah.
His time's being divided, and that's a distraction. At the same time, Notre Dame guys love the guy, and they need to make it. We need to send this guy out on a high note. And I'm hoping it gives them a spark rather than they all sit there and cry because their guy's leaving.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is I'm agree. You're right. It's physically impossible for it not to be somewhat of a distraction. On the other hand, it's all about the players, and I don't, I don't doubt that Lee is going to be putting his all into preparing for these games or anything.
Yeah,
it's just
got more on his plate, and it's just the way it is. Like nobody could be mad about this. Like I'm happy for the guy. This is just the business. This is how this goes.
But John, imagine let's just play a hypothetical here for a second. Hypothetically, and I don't think this is going to happen because I just got done praising Notre Dame's defense as being one of the best in the land. Hypothetically, Clemson goes out there and torches Notre Dame's defense. All right. Let's say it's the final score is 45-25. Right, Clemson puts up 500 yards of offense. ETN goes off. Trevor Lawrence goes off, has 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, whatever it is. How many Notre Dame fans are going to be saying, see, this is a distraction from Lee?
I think that's a stretch.
Okay.
I honestly do. And I'm like a lunatic with this stuff. And I think that's a stretch. And the reason why is there's enough body of work with Lee in this defense on the plus side that if that happens, some people are going to go there. But my angle would be you got to tip your cap to Lawrence and all their talent. Some people will go there, but I wouldn't. I think that's kind of cheap to jab at when the defense has been so great to do that at the end.
Well, fans will find anything to jab at, but
yeah.
So let's take the other angle here, John. Notre Dame's first and only season in the ACC. We have been just discussing here for some reason, every scenario leads to Clemson winning the game and not losing the game. Let's say Notre Dame does win the game on Saturday, which is, by the way, very possible. I mean, they beat him the first time. There's no reason to believe they can't do it the second time. How big of a I know it's one thing. The goal is to win a national title. That's what the Irish fans want. And believe me, if I was an Irish fan, I'd want the same thing. That's the ultimate goal, especially if you make it this far into the game. You're already probably a shoe-in to make the playoffs no matter what happens in this game. But the ultimate goal is to win it all. It's great to win. It's great to beat Clemson in November. It's even greater to beat them in a championship game when you're been independent since Jesus walked. But the real goal is to win a national championship. How great would that be? Forget the national championship for a second. How great would it be for the Irish to get granted this crazy 1-year coronavirus ACC deal, make it into a championship game for the first time in Notre Dame's history, and to run through the ACC and Clemson twice like a hot knife through butter and carry that trophy home back to South Bend? Would that be almost as good as winning a national championship? I mean, I know it's not. I'm not comparing the two, but would that not be sweet?
It would be so good that I haven't even allowed myself to think of what it would be like.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. That's how I think about sex.
Like, like seriously though, it obviously a championship's a championship. This is the absolute next best thing. The timing of it, trolling the conferences, trolling the ACC. Like, this would be the ultimate comeback on Twitter to anybody who ever said anything about Notre Dame and conferences again. All you got to do is bring this up. Notre Dame people will never have to take that crap again if they pull this off and then leave. It is the biggest troll setup of all time.
Yeah.
Like it would be, I'm telling you, every time I play this out, I stop short of that because I can't even allow myself that joy and what it would be, because I don't want to let myself down. So I don't even process. Dude, it would be the ultimate. Like, you could not tell me, John, write up a dream scenario. This would be it.
Yeah.
This is literally it. It would be the most epic troll job of all time. It would just be, I mean, words can't even describe it.
If you would have told me 12 months ago, not even 12 months ago, hell, 6 months ago, that Clemson was not only playing for the pride of Clemson after losing in the regular season, and now their backs against the wall for the playoffs and the conference championship. But if you would have told me that Clemson is somehow playing for the pride of the conference,
all conferences.
Well, I don't know.
No. We would use this against all conference affiliates. You're carrying that banner for all of them, bud.
No, I'm not. No, believe me, the ACC, they're not carrying the conference, the torch for anybody, because everybody thinks they suck. But they are carrying the conference for the ACC for the first time. Well, I wouldn't say the first time. I think that Clemson was carrying the flag for the ACC maybe back in 2015 and 16 when they went in the playoffs, and of course, that was at a point where the ACC was on a downward trend. Anyway, but this is the first time I could say that Clemson really is playing for the pride of the entire conference. If you are a fan of another team in the ACC, if you have any sort of ACC pride, you need Clemson to win this game, because, like you just said, this would be a 1,000-year troll job.
Yep. It would be the ultimate. And here's the other thing too is, the other thing with this is the divergent paths of this outcome for Notre Dame. So you got your win in November, although a bit of the shine comes off it because of the personnel losses. I own that. It was still a huge win, the biggest win in 27 years, but it isn't exactly the same as if you had Lawrence and everything. Still the biggest win in 27 years, though. But where we're at is, there's a huge difference between losing to Clemson here, then being in a 1-4 matchup with Alabama, having that go bad, versus pulling this off, the most epic troll job ever. And, oh, by the way, now you'll be a 2 and not have to play Alabama round 1. These are two extremely opposite paths here. So the troll job's part of it. But the best part about it would be setting up the playoff to where you can avoid Alabama round 1.
I like the idea of Notre Dame being in the ACC. I think it's worked out great for the conference. I think it's worked out great for Notre Dame. You know, John, there's a lot of people out there. I saw something today that said some sort of hypothetical thing. What would Notre Dame's record have been had they played their original schedule before joining the ACC? They would have had 3 losses. What 3 losses would those have been, John? Can you enlighten me? What on Notre Dame's original schedule was that much harder than what they played this year? See,
the part I saw that too, and the part I really don't get is a part of the 3 losses that they built in one to Clemson that already didn't happen, because outside of Clemson, who the hell are they going to lose 3 games to? Because they already beat Clemson. So if you were going to mark one of those as the 3, is it going to be USC?
No, come on.
Okay, so it would have had to been Wisconsin. They would have had to build.
No, that wouldn't have been the contest.
So where are the losses then?
There isn't any. This is my point.
With that 9-3, I'm struggling to find the 3.
My point. I don't see the record being any different.
I was playing this out in my mind too, and
was Northwestern on there? You'd beat Northwestern.
No, Wisconsin was a big game we lost.
Okay.
USC was the other big game we lost. That's pretty much it. Stanford, but they weren't going to beat us this year.
No, come on, they're terrible.
So to me, the two toughest games were probably the ones we played anyways, North Carolina and Clemson.
That's my point. So
Yeah.
here's what I'm getting at here is I believe that and things change every year, but I believe that your ACC schedule was tougher than the one you would have had before.
I don't know about that.
Well, Wisconsin's no good. Wisconsin, have you seen who they played and who they've lost to? They're not good.
Yeah. And well, see, here's the thing though. We were going to play Wisconsin very early in the year when they were looking good.
If you had to bet any amount of money that mattered to you, whether it was $5 or $500, if North Carolina played Southern Cal tomorrow, who would you pick?
North Carolina.
Okay, there you go. That would have been
North Carolina. USC wouldn't stop them.
Outside of Clemson, Southern Cal would have been the toughest game on your schedule, on the original schedule, and North Carolina would beat them. We both know that.
Probably, I would say so.
So I think, and by the way, this is even more credit to the Irish. I mean, the ACC is what it is, but you played out of the entire ACC, you played two of the top three teams in it.
Yeah,
and beat them both, and beat one of them badly.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's interesting. When I look at this ACC and how this has played out now that we're through the whole regular season, I didn't mind it, but to some degree, just being in the one region, and it just gets a little boring when you're used to being all over the place, worrying about all conferences because it all matters to you when you're independent. Being pigeonholed in this one area all year, it was just a tad bit boring to me compared to being used to having to worry about what USC is doing way out west. And so it was good, but I need a little more variety.
Okay, so we saw the experiment take place this year, and that's really what it was. This Notre Dame being in a conference experiment. Now we have John Swofford stepping down starting January 1st, 2022, I believe. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, John Swofford is the current commissioner of the ACC. He's retiring in a year from now, just over a year from now. They have named the next guy. And who is this guy, John? Tell us about him.
Okay, so the next commissioner of the ACC is going to be Dr. Jim Phillips, who's currently Northwestern's athletic director. Okay, Jim Phillips was an associate AD at Notre Dame for a while, had a couple kids go through Notre Dame. Jim Phillips is a guy where you're going to love him. Okay, I know you have your issues with the ACC leadership. You've mentioned that to me the entire time we've known each other.
Yeah.
You're going to like this guy. Okay. Every time, well, for one thing, Notre Dame people wanted him as the next AD when our guy leaves. So that's going to be off the possibilities. I have never heard a bad word said about Jim Phillips in Chicago ever. He is very well respected as a businessman and as a regular guy interpersonally. So you're going to love him. This is a guy, Pigskin, where whenever a big time front office job comes up in Chicago, everybody wants Jim Phillips right away. Like with all the Bears stuff going on, what are they going to do with their leadership? He's a guy people have said, go ahead and put him in charge of the whole operation. He's good at building it out, delegating, doing whatever you need to do. I'm telling you, I've never heard a single bad word about this guy ever. So I think you're going to be very, very pleased.
So here is my issue, and I don't doubt what you're saying. I don't know anything about the guy. Clearly, you know a lot more about him than I do, and clearly he's qualified for the job. You're saying everybody wanted him as an AD. I don't doubt any of that. There's two ways that I'm looking at this thing, and we'll see how it plays out. He obviously has connections to Notre Dame. One of my biggest criticisms of the current staff, John Swofford in particular, is that he is sort of kowtowed to Notre Dame and what they want. I still feel as if Notre Dame has benefited slightly more than the ACC has in a way in this sort of agreement that they have. So the one of two things can happen here with this sort of loose connection to Notre Dame. It can go one of two ways. It can go the way of what I want is, will he force the hand of Notre Dame come when's that TV contract up?
What is it? 22 or 3 years? 4? Yeah, 24, I thought, something like that.
Yeah, sort of right around the same time as the college football playoff contract, ironically enough. And we'll get to that in a minute. But so will he sort of push the issue and try to bring Notre Dame in the ACC? Because as the ACC commissioner, your number one job is to do what's best for the ACC. That would be what's best for the ACC, is to bring Notre Dame in any way, shape, or form. Well, not any way, shape, or form.
You already got any way, shape, and it's 5 games.
We've already seen any way, shape, or form, but permanently in all sports. Or will his connections at Notre Dame allow him to extend what's already happening now, which would be my worst nightmare?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
I don't think the Notre Dame angle with him is as prominent as you're talking about it being. Like we're talking a very long time ago that he was at Notre Dame. He's
still a Midwest guy. He still understands the whole dynamic with the Notre Dame independence. I mean, he's a Chicago guy.
Now, here, let me flip this on you. Yeah. What if it's in the ACC's advantage to have him with Notre Dame respect and in there? Maybe Notre Dame's more open to working with him from the ACC side.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, because he has the in there. Listen.
That's why I'm holding my judgment out to see which side of the coin he's going to play there.
Well, but he's got it easy because he could just keep going along with what Swofford did. Nobody's going to bat an eye except for you. He doesn't have to be the bad guy. He could just let it go as what it is right now.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't really have to make decisions. It's like, oh, well, this is grandfathered in. We're going to play that out.
Yeah.
Here's where I think this comes to a head. Down the road is Notre Dame people now are seeing the flexibility I talk about with conference affiliation we usually don't have. We're in a position where we could lose the biggest game of the year and still make the playoff.
Yes, there you go.
That is something we will never have as an independent team. Notre Dame people are living this out this year. The question, I think, would be what's going to happen with the playoff when the TV deal for that expires? Are they going to expand or not? I've texted this to you before. More people at Notre Dame are open to ACC affiliation full-time than I think I realized before.
And I think this year hurt.
I think they are.
I think this year opened up more of those fans too, John.
Well, look, it's hard to not like the flexibility we have right now.
Yes.
Okay, but if in 2024-25, if we redo the playoff situation to where it goes to 8, then I think that eliminates that problem for Notre Dame. You could be independent, lose one game, and still make the playoff every year at 11-1 independent. So to me, I want to see what that playoff structure's like. If it gets expanded to the point where Notre Dame can lose a game and still make it most years, it's independence for life.
Yeah.
Even if they don't do that, I still think it's independence for life. But I think people are open to it, but I don't think enough to undo 100 and whatever years of being independent.
Well, every great thing's come to an end, John, including independence.
Listen, listen, this is really easy. It's really easy. Redo the playoff and say, if you don't win a conference championship, you're not eligible, period.
Oh, look,
Like you could force Notre Dame if you wanted to.
They could. They could.
You know, but
I'm going to hold out judgment on this new guy. I'm going to take your word for it that he's not only competent but a great leader and all that. But the situation, how he works the situation with Notre Dame and in relation to the ACC is something that isn't going to be important to me. A lot of people, John, think that somebody like me who's a Clemson fan, all I should care about is winning conference championships and making the playoffs and winning national championships. And that road would be easier for Clemson year in, year out if Notre Dame was not in the picture.
Yep, 100%. But you are looking out for the entire conference and their perception, how they're perceived naturally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty mature, though. Most fans don't have that view. Maybe they do. I don't know.
No, most fans don't have that view.
I don't know. Or but pigskin, when Notre Dame and Clemson play in a couple days.
Yeah.
Are all the Miami people rooting for Clemson because they hate Notre Dame, but they don't necessarily like Clemson either? Where does that fall when it comes to those allegiances? Or is it going to be all against Notre Dame, keep it in the ACC?
They just hate Notre Dame. But do you know the one thing that Notre Dame and Miami have in common?
What's that? Being a private school?
But I know what no ACC championships is. Neither one of them have an ACC championship ring yet.
I feel a lot better about our position in this. Hey, man, I can't get enough of what North Carolina delivered to them. I can't get enough. And I got to mention this. These are front runners, man. These Miami people love to talk, and then they lose, and suddenly you're blocked on Twitter. They're front runners.
Yeah.
They're all about it when it's good, and then they lose. And before you know it, Always Irish is blocked, and I'm not even allowed to give it to them. That's
all right. That means you're doing something right. Do you know how sad it is to be in the ACC for 20 years and not win? Well, when did they join the ACC? I don't even know because they've never been relevant. If they had been relevant in the ACC, I might know when they joined. I want to say 2005 or 2006.
That's a long time. Now, wait, am I wrong in saying aren't they a private school? Isn't Miami a private school? I thought so. That would be, and that's the thing, man. They're all giving us a hard time about the game. I'm like, dude, we're 1 year and we're already playing for this title game. What are you talking to me about?
I would have loved to see Miami play Notre Dame in their first year in the ACC. I think that the whoever made the schedule screwed up with that. Anyway,
I would have liked to see Clemson and North Carolina too.
Yeah, me too.
I would have liked to see you guys play another big game.
In the minimum, at least, in a short season, at least Clemson did play both Miami and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It would have been better to see Clemson and Notre Dame play, Miami and Notre Dame play, and then, a round robin deal there, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
There had to be somebody left out, and I guess it was North Carolina. Speaking of the playoffs, man, if I was a Notre Dame fan, Notre Dame fans should be walking around with their head held high this year, and you have another troll job that will last you a century, no matter what happens this season. The big knock on Notre Dame being independent for forever, and if you go back to, 2017, when you made the playoffs, right? 12-0?
18.
2018. Sorry, Clemson's there every year. I get all these years mixed up. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Sorry, Anyway, 2018. Notre Dame goes 12-0 in the regular season as an independent team. What's the number one knock on Notre Dame getting in the playoffs, John? What was it?
They don't have a 13th data point. Oh, maybe we should go schedule the junior college down the street and then count it as a game.
So by 13th data point, you mean they played how many less games than the conference champions?
1. And I would argue 0 if you take out the junior high schools. These teams build in.
No, one less game, right?
I think I know where this is headed, and I want you to proceed.
Yes, this is headed somewhere.
Yep. I know where you're going, and I like it. Go.
Ohio State is sitting there at number 4. How many less games have they played than Notre Dame this year?
They are going to end up playing 5 less. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, 5th, 5.
How many less games will they play than pretty much anybody in the conversation? 4 or 5.
Hey, Pigskin, let me ask you this. Why is USC not getting the Ohio State treatment? They're in identical positions. 5-0, playing nobody, sitting there. Why aren't they getting that consideration?
Because
they are not the brand name Ohio State.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think they're as big of a brand name.
But not recently.
Well,
They haven't on the field, no.
If I'm being objective here, I think the reason is because I have Ohio State in my top 4. I'm just setting this up for the the crazy. And I was the one that defended Notre Dame in 2018 and said they deserved to be in there. So yeah. I'm doing the same thing for Ohio State, even though it's a big difference between 1 game and 5 game difference. The reason that USC is not getting the same love is because they don't have a top 10 win. They have a bunch of very close wins to bad teams. So they haven't looked as good as Ohio State on the field after 5 games. 5.
Yeah, it's here's what I did. I put out a show saying I believe Ohio State to be a top 4 team. However, the games have to still matter no matter what we think of an eye test or how much talent, recent results. The games have to matter.
Yes.
And then Florida and LSU happened. Now I'm thinking the games don't freaking matter.
Right.
Because nothing happened.
So you saw the Dabo Swinney comments?
Yeah.
Did you agree with them?
Yes, but listen.
I mean, what did he say that was wrong? Let's go there.
I'm playing, let's make a deal.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with Ohio State being in as long as I never have to hear about our 1 game again. That's my caveat.
That's a great way.
You're getting 5 weeks out of pocket. We're crediting you for wins. I never want to hear about our 1 ever again. If you're okay with 5, philosophically, there's no way you can't be okay with 1.
Guess what, John?
You can't.
If Clemson only played 5 games in a season, they'd be undefeated right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying. Now, again, I have Ohio State in my top 4. I think they're one of the 4 best teams in the country.
Pigskin. Nobody had them getting boat raced out of Purdue a couple years ago and Iowa before that. That's why the games matter.
Yeah,
even though we think you're great.
It does. It does. My dream scenario starts with this weekend with the Tigers revenging the loss. And
you want a piece of Ohio State. That's what you want, buddy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I want all that smoke.
Yep.
Because there is no smoke there. Of course, Clemson is their daddy. Everybody knows that. All right, John. I think we've said it all and nothing at all at the same time.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yes.
But this is exciting, man. And here's one little thing I want to finish on.
Yes.
This year's been rough for everybody. There has been nobody not negatively impacted in one way or another by everything going on politically, societally, virus-wise, everything.
Yeah.
This Saturday, in a lot of ways, for a lot of people like us, is one little innocent joy payoff for everybody dealing with all that. Saturday's going to be a hell of a lot of fun all day, and we all deserve it. Everybody's been through so much. Have a beer and enjoy it.
I agree. This has been, in many ways, a terrible year. In most ways, a terrible year. It was an election year, a very divisive election. Coronavirus has pretty much ruined society, no matter which political spectrum you stand on. I think we can all agree on that. The one saving grace is that we had college football. For all us college football fans anyway, I can't speak for everybody. There's a lot of people out there that could give 2 shits about college football. I'm not one of them. Obviously, you're not either. It has been somewhat of an escape. And the fact that we're even here in December, a week before Christmas, having a game between 2 great teams to see who's going to represent the ACC in the playoffs. Hopefully, both of them do. If it's up to me, it was all worth it to me. So you know what? At the end of the day, I wish the Irish luck. I hope all the players stay healthy on both sides of the ball. I hope it's a great game, and hopefully we get both those guys in there and we can show them what the ACC is all about.
Would you listen if Notre Dame and Clemson got in? Would you count that as a feather in the ACC's cap, or no? Because in Notre Dame's half-assed agreement,
no,
would you be like, would you write it off as like that?
I'm taking whatever I can get, John. I'll be on Twitter all day long tweeting about how the ACC is the superior conference because they got two teams.
There goes that SEC talk, getting multiple teams in. Look at us.
Yeah, I'm taking what I can get, man.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But it should be fun. I'm excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. And what I hope is, I hope we have a really good game again. That's what I hope, one way or the other.
Yeah, me too. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. It's been an amazing conversation, and maybe we'll see how the game goes. We might be doing a third show.
It crossed my mind, man.
It's possible.
A rubber match.
It's possible. Can you? And this is pretty unbelievable to even think this is possible. Clemson could hypothetically play Notre Dame 3 times in one season. Wouldn't that be amazing?
It's wild. That is wild to think about, but it could match up that way.
So if that happens, obviously we'll be back again to discuss the whole thing. So see you guys later. Thanks for joining us. It's been great. Thanks, John.
Take care.